Everybody, welcome back to Pro AV today. We're excited to have an in-studio version of the show today. Always love when people can get down here to chat with us in person in Dallas. But today we're specifically talking about the home automation and residential market. You know, it's one of the challenges of that market specifically is that the chasm is so wide between the top end and the low end that it's almost difficult at times to even really identify true opportunities in the residential space. And my next guest is someone who's going to help us break that down today. We've got George Katsiris from Savant Systems. George, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Ben. Glad to be here.
You know, George, we talked a little bit previously about kind of the opportunity in the residential slash home automation market. But, you know, I hinted at it a second ago, but the chasm really between the end users all the way up from the bottom to the top is so dramatically different that it's hard for people to try and carve out a lane in the residential and home automation market space. You know, as somebody who sees that on a daily basis, what does that look like and how do you guys try and manage that and even identify different opportunities in the space?
Really, the short answer is not trying to create one thing that serves that entire spectrum. And so we've, I guess, identified a bunch of different customer types that map to, I would say, job types. So at Savant, we have a few different business units. We have Savant Power, we have GE Lighting, and then we also have Savant Professional Smart Home. And I think that, so the GE Lighting side, I think, focuses a little bit more on the consumer side of the spectrum. But really on the Savant Professional Smart Home side, it's more of a do-it-for-me space where we go through installers who do all the design and selling and installing and deployment of those systems. And even within that, I'd say there's a huge spectrum, as you're pointing out, ranging from a single room that just might be, hey, I don't want to hang my own TV, but I also want some better sound while I'm in there, maybe a little bit of lighting in there, maybe to the next kind of step up, which might be a kind of multi-zone audio job, or with some lighting or this and this, scaling all the way up to the 50,000 square foot mansions and castles and yachts and things that end up having much different needs than at the other side of the spectrum. So with that, we've created solutions ranging from different host types to different products that kind of map to those different jobs, if you will.
Well, you talk about those products specifically, and one of the things I think that's, I wouldn't say 100% unique to the residential market, but unique definitely largely to the residential market, is that whenever you come into an installation, most of the time somebody has something, some level of automation, whether it's an Alexa device, or maybe they have their smart light set up, or some level of automation in their house. So, and a lot of times it's additive, right? It's not a whole rebuild. It's an additive an additive installation process. You know, as you guys design products and identify some of those market types, how important is not only interoperability but accessibility of some of those devices to that product development process?
It's a great point. There are certainly more homes that exist than there are homes that are being built, and so that retrofit market is huge. I would say there are, well over 85 million wireless routers in America. So Wi-Fi has always been inherent to our platform as our preferred antenna type, if you will. So that's ubiquitous, I'd say, and not just to mention superior in terms of how fast it is and everything else. So I think that scales. And also having the integration with all of those things, ranging from, like you were saying, Alexa and Google Voice, which we do, as well as, Ring and Nest and those types of devices, all the way up to, things that might be different based on what kind of consumer. And sometimes you see a mixed bag as well. Sometimes people have some of those things within their home as well as other types of solutions. So it's very important, I think, also to just be able to say yes to the customer, because their awareness might be of certain things that they've seen advertisements for or seen in the stores, and that might be how they even start and get a taste of automation. But as they either grow older or their needs change within the home, we're right there to scale all the way up. And I think that's one of the things that makes us a little bit different.
Well, you talked a little bit about kind of those new home builds, and that's one of the markets that's kind of emerging for some of the manufacturers in the market as a whole, because you look at some of these home builders, and instead of adding space or making larger rooms, they're including home automation as a selling point into some of their new builds, whether that's energy automation. I say that down here in Texas because we had a pretty massive winter storm a few years ago that killed our power. Would have been helpful to have that, but whether it's that or integrated home theater systems or outdoor pool pump systems that respond to whatever command you want to give it. It's interesting from a marketing standpoint because the profile of that buyer is a little bit different. Is there, from a product design process, I feel like it's probably pretty similar, but from a market identification and even marketing standpoint, how is that market a little bit different than the traditional residential end user kind of making that decision?
Well, it's a great point. I would say that, we have different cornerstones that we focus on. One is power for sure, and that is the most foundational, literally, to any kind of smart home that you're going to have, and where everything is going. You have entire counties banning pulling any kind of propane. You have such a quick shift, whether it's the major car manufacturers saying all their vehicles will be electric in the next 10 years. And so the demand for electric is going through the roof, but so is the consumption, and the grid is the oldest in the world. And so the grid itself just can't handle it, as you guys have seen here at certain moments when it's peaking, and it's just going to get worse. So we pride ourselves on having, and it also hasn't been changed in, forever. Think about it. The breaker in your house is one of the dumbest kind of things still around. And so our smart breaker companion modules give that kind of dynamic load control and management to the users, and that's something that I think a lot of people building new homes see adds tons of value, because it's going to be there for decades on an ongoing basis. And inherent to that is lighting control, actually, within our power management system. So that's important because that's another thing, and I'd say there's wants and needs. So marketing is important to make sure that you're touching on, depending on who you're marketing to, what is it? Is it something that you're talking to a builder and they're going to see that as something that can be built into the mortgage that they're selling? And then there's the things that people actually want every day, which quite frankly is entertainment. That's what still to this day brings most people through the doors of our dealers. They're asking for music throughout their home, video throughout their home. And so, and they're not mutually exclusive. It's very important to us to have a great experience, and we always start with the user experience and work our way backwards. So that dovetails nicely into marketing as well, reaching out to the users, letting them know what we have that we feel could add to their lifestyle improvement, and then working our way backwards to the technology itself.
Well, talking about kind of some of that, those newer areas, right? You talk about entertainment and experience at home. That is the point of entry for a lot of what I'll call traditional AV companies, right? Whether it's display manufacturers, speaker manufacturers, lighting manufacturers as a whole. Residential has kind of at times been the redheaded stepchild of the AV industry for one reason or another, whether it's scale, opportunity, wherever. But now you're seeing that kind of dissolve a little bit. Talk about some of those opportunities that you're seeing, whether it is lighting or display integration, where AV actually has creeped a little bit more and more into that residential side.
That's a great point. I think that the do-it-for-me trend might be one of the driving factors here. I think, I probably was 8 years old and my dad taught me how to change the oil of my car, and I will never do that for the rest of my life, right? Because it just doesn't make sense. It's a lot easier for 25 bucks to go down the street, and I could probably do 10, 20 emails while they're doing that. And that do-it-for-me trend, I think, was accelerated by COVID. And so you have people who, again, ordering a boba tea for $5 and paying $7 for the delivery and the service of that is something that would be so foreign to like my parents' generation, but something that I'm happy to do and prefer to do than actually getting in the car, driving, and doing all that. So that is true in terms of trends, is what you're seeing here with residential. It used to be you had to be rich to have somebody doing your lawn and cleaning your house and doing all these things for you. And we used these prosumers that were the kind of, folks who were willing and brave to go and change out their thermostat or put an architectural speaker in the wall. I think that is, now more and more and more something that people are seeing is worth the cost of having somebody come to their house and add this, because it's something that they use every single day. They might go to a friend's house and see how much it actually, improves their lifestyle. Music is something that, every day at my house is always going, all the kids' rooms, at my house, all that, all day long. And so having somebody come and install those speakers in the ceiling, or a sound bar to a TV and all those things, is something that we don't see diminishing. In fact, we're seeing a huge trend forward on that.
Well, and what's driving that too really is end user demand, right? You talk about things like DoorDash and Uber Eats, and that being kind of a comparatively kind of relatively new, right? There obviously has always been some level of like pizza delivery and things like that, but at scale, it's not something that was offered in a lot of places. Now it is. You talk about that do it for me. That being driven by the end user is really interesting, because the end user, especially in residential, most of the times is the decision maker, right? The person who has to pay for the products, make the bill, make sure that everything gets paid for, and obviously the integrator at the end of the day, most of the time, is designing and speccing and things like that. But there's been this renewed focus, especially in a post-pandemic world, on the end user. Talk a little bit about some of the ways that the end user, even outside of the do-it-for-me trend, has impacted specifically what's happening in residential right now.
Again, there's a spectrum. So on one side of the spectrum, we were talking, I think, more of that, having it be more accessible to more end users. I think certainly, connectivity, social media, things like that. People are, just having a higher level of awareness of smart home technology. And on the other side of the spectrum, though, this is something that has been happening for some time, because if your house is 40,000 square feet, it is more like an enterprise or commercial building than it is like your average single-family home residence. Everything from the HVAC systems, which your average home might have 1 or 2 thermostats with a compressor, whereas on the high end of the luxury residential space, you'll have several subsystems. You might have geothermal heating, radiant floor heating. You'll have in addition to all of the different things that you have, not to mention pool heaters and other stuff like that. And same is true of networking, right? Having enterprise-grade switching and management of access points to all of the above. And so I think that the user awareness is the most important thing to that, and then the needs are dependent on the home itself.
Well, one of the things that I love about Savant is that you guys continue to have your finger on the pulse of really every aspect of that channel, right? End user all the way up to obviously the hardware manufacturer. What are some of the things in the next 5 to 10 years that people can expect, not only from Savant but from the industry as a whole?
Going back to the earlier conversation, I would say power is going to be the thing that when we started going down the path of creating smart power solutions, which was over 7 years ago, I think a lot of folks were kind of scratching their heads saying, like, why are you going in this direction? And now with all of the news that they're seeing every day, they're starting to understand why. And that trend is going to become even more pronounced in the next 5 to 10 years, absolutely. I also think that, things like we were talking about these different categories, smart lighting, once you've had it in your home, it's something that you can't really live without. Again, these are kind of more foundational things. Then there's things that are more on the emotional side of our day-to-day, like the entertainment side. I think that we're seeing, the streaming services continue to take over in terms of everybody's day-to-day consumption of music. Accessibility is key. You have guests being able to have what we call personalization, and one of our, I think, signature features is called scenes. And Savant scenes allow the end user to be able to define, and so what by click of one button or even a scheduled event can happen. So I'd say that the trend, I guess I would call it shifting a little bit from control to more of automation. We use the word home automation a lot, but I think we use it kind of loosely because by definition, an automation system is one that knows its users, it knows their state, it knows their preferences, and then it drives actions based on those things. And most of what has been happening in this space and in this channel has been more on the control side. But you're seeing more and more with AI, that's not going anywhere, whether that's, again, from network to cameras to whatever it is, the algorithms that are used on your entertainment streaming platforms. So we see that trend continuing, but being able to accommodate that and putting the user first and what is personal to them. See, everybody wakes up in the morning, everybody gets ready, everybody departs, everybody comes home, everybody entertains guests and goes to bed. But what do you want to have happen during those moments is unique to you. And that's where we try to not be predictive, but allow you to either capture that moment as a Savant scene or to create a scheduled moment or anything like that that you can recall at any time.
Well, you and I had a chance to have some of these conversations out at CEDIA, and if you had a chance to be at the show, then you guys all probably saw the same thing. You know, sticking on that for a second, this is really the first large-scale CEDIA show in 3 years post-pandemic. How important to that, or how important to you guys is having something like that really is almost the meeting of the minds of the large organization? How important is it to your business strategy these days?
It's critical for us. It's so great to have seen, so many familiar faces. We don't have the most dealers on the planet, and that's by choice, but we feel like we have the best ones, and so it's almost like an extended family. So just first of all, seeing so many, friends within the industry and dealers of ours that are healthy and have survived the pandemic and have grown in their business because, like I said, of the accelerant that COVID was to adding value to their service. And that's something that, again, we don't see going anywhere. That's just going to continue. And something that we've banked on from day one is that, more and more over time, the industry will gain value, and there'll be some consolidation, right? We've seen roll-ups, dealer consolidations, we've seen all that stuff happening. But by and large, most importantly, we've seen just the continued adding of value to the service that they bring in as technology consultants, who ultimately are there to figure out how you live, like we just talked about a little bit, and how they can accommodate that. And so for us, being able to show them that we're here still, that we're super committed to this channel and to that entire, luxury residential market, all the way down to, the do-it-for-me's and the entry level, is something that is just very critical, not to mention new technologies and stuff that we want to show.
Well, George, thanks so much for coming on the show today. We wish the best of luck to you guys in Savant moving forward.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
And thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next time.